Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you once again for taking the time to join us for another of our live webinar, this time in collaboration with our leading partner, HP. My name is Melanie Ancheta. I'll be doing the introduction and I'll also be doing the Q&A part of this session. I am basically proud to be joined today by two of my colleagues. They are, just one second, sorry, slides are a bit slow. They are Jonathan Sprague, which is a pre-sales consultant from HP, and Thomas Ruckus, which is our performance test consultant at Test House. Basically, he specializes in LoadRunner. I will briefly run through the agenda for you. So basically from introduction, and then Thomas will take over to talk about Test House for a few minutes. And then basically the bulk of the presentation will be done by Jonathan on both LoadRunner Performance Center 11. And there'll be a quick demo, I think 10 minutes or so. And then basically after that, there'll be a Q&A for 5 minutes. Before I go, also during the presentation, if you want to make the screen a bit larger, maybe ideal when Jonathan does his demo, please do not forget to press the full screen at the top of the page. Basically, without further delay, I now pass you over to my colleague, Thomas.
Thank you, Melanie. Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about our main service, which we provide, which is performance testing. Test House, well, we have delivered a lot of projects, including performance validation. We have completed performance testing projects by validating system performance. We also did performance monitoring for various clients. We have also completed projects by monitoring system performance. Okay, therefore, we are focusing on the final measurable performance characteristics, such as load testing, which is carried out to understand the behavior of an application at a given level of load. We use test results. They basically give us the response times of all critical business transactions. Stress testing is used to take the application to its functional limits, so it's used by a greater number of users than expected. Stress testing aim is to determine the robustness of an application with an extreme load. We also do scalability testing, which is testing of a software application for measuring its capability to scale up or scale out. Our external and internal applications, such as e-commerce for retail industry, high secure websites for banking industries, also large-scale CRM and other database implementations. We use different methodologies to ensure that system meets performance criteria. We can provide managed testing service as an independent verification, covering the entire testing lifecycle, or managed components such as UAT, user acceptance testing, integration testing, or browser compatibility testing. I'm going to mention several of our customers. It's Santander Bank. We're currently rolling out testing for the CRM, Department of Trade and Industry. We're testing the internal portal, Department for International Development. We do application profiling for Oracle and e-business suite. We also got a project with BSkyB, and we're testing a Accordion CRM, which is a database implementation. Therefore, we're doing projects with Associate Northcliffe Digital, and we're testing their web portals. UBS, we're testing their Java-based applications, and of course, many more. And now I'm going to pass it to Jonathan.
Thank you, Thomas. My name is Jonathan Sprake, pre-sales consultant for HP, focusing mainly on the quality management software, and in this case we're talking about performance software, so solutions LoadRunner and Performance Center. And we're going to be looking at what's new in version 11 of these tools. So the agenda for this section, first of all, I'll look at the market drivers, where we have been developing the products and why, and then look at each of those products in turn and what's new in the suite. So the main driver is application modernization. Most organizations are going through an application modernization drive, and lots of things within the organization related to the applications and the technology we work with are changing. So in terms of people, gone are the days where you can sit with all of your co-workers. Most organizations now have distributed teams with people working all over the world, lots of offshore resources involved in testing, particularly performance testing. Processes are also changing. Even if you're not using an agile methodology, chances are that your waterfall processes are being used in a more agile, with a small a, kind of way, and we need to be responsive to these changes. And the technology has changed from large monolithic applications to composite applications that are made up of lots of different moving parts, lots of different back-end applications, and many service-oriented applications in the back end. So our solutions need to be able to support these changes. We need to enable distributed teams to collaborate, to be able to track what each person is doing and maintain a correct version of all of the assets that we're working with. We need to be able to support those different processes, and we need to support the new technologies and to be innovative in the development of our tools to enable the ease of use of those tools against these new technologies. So these are the kind of the design goals and the ethos behind the development of the latest version of our application management products. And that is Performance Center, the enterprise tool, and LoadRunner, the project-based tool for test automation, performance test automation. So if we look at the product stack, if you like, the software stack, that's the LoadRunner suite of tools. It's been the same for many years now. It's a mature application. And these tools are also used within Performance Center. If you're doing enterprise performance testing, you still use things like ViewGen and analysis, but the management of those tools and the control and load generators is done by Performance Center. And I'll talk more about Performance Center in the second half. And finally, within the application suite, we have HP Diagnostics, which is a tool for looking at the performance within the application layer. So you might be running a performance test and you see that a search is taking 10 seconds, but you wouldn't know any more than that without looking at some tools that are looking at the application itself. HP Diagnostics can provide you with that capability so that you can see the method calls, for instance, in a J2E application behind that search, and you can see exactly where within the code the performance problems are. Not going to talk any more about diagnostics today, and in this first session we're going to look at LoadRunner, so what is new within the core LoadRunner tool suite. And these developments also are relative to Performance Center, or relevant to Performance Center as well, because many of these tools are also used in Performance Center. So as I said, LoadRunner is our project-based performance testing tool. It comes with a site license and is designed to be used at a particular site location. And the goal of the product is to enable you to emulate production workloads on your applications in order to identify performance bottlenecks and hopefully then optimize the application and remove those bottlenecks. Ultimately, with the goal of reducing risk in deploying systems into production, reducing the cost of rework by catching defects early, and through the automation, accelerating that test cycle. So these are some of the new features in the current version. And first of all, we have the LoadRunner TruClient. TruClient is a new protocol for scripting against Web 2.0 applications, and in particular AJAX applications. One of the problems with Web 2, or very interactive web technology we have now, is that it's not just a case of making a request to a server and getting a page back. There's lots of dynamic, asynchronous behavior going on in these web pages. You might have little pieces of an application on a page, such as a share ticker, for instance, that's making its own communication with a server in the background to bring you data to your rich client interface. And this will be using some kind of AJAX technology. AJAX also, there's many different toolkits, and developers often extend these toolkits. So to support this with a traditional LoadRunner type protocol level protocol is very difficult. You have to, in some ways, reverse engineer a lot of the client-side scripting that's going on to try and replicate that when you run a script. So the new scripting technology we have, LoadRunner TruClient, addresses these issues. So here you see the scripting client is actually embedded within the browser. So the window on the left of the image there is the LoadRunner scripting engine. And because it's embedded within a browser, it's working at the document object model level, so it's integrated directly with the document that you're displaying. So there's no problems with compatibility with different toolkits. It supports any application that would run within the browser. Everything's now done from this side panel. All your parameterization, adding transactions, any coding you want to do, you can do from within here as well. And it also has automatic suggestion of steps where there might be problems where things aren't detected properly. One of the advantages of the new technology is that there are no correlations. Because we're working with the browser, you don't have to catch session variables and parameterize them and then use them later in the script, which you would with a traditional LoadRunner script. So there's no correlation required at all now. And it's a very interactive way of scripting and very easy to use. So I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of how that works. So you should now be able to see a browser. This is an online banking application, and this is the application that I want to test, and I know it's an AJAX application. So I'm going to switch into LoadRunner. So this is a traditional LoadRunner script where you have lots of code in here. And one particular point that I'm going to talk about in the demo here is it's a banking application, and we're going to select some bank accounts. And you can see within the code here that the selecting of these different accounts, my savings and checking accounts, within the drop-down selection, I've actually got the balance. And that would be a problem here. We'd have to do some parameterization, do some coding to catch that. And that's one aspect you'll see when I do this recording here, that it's much easier to cope with those kind of things with TruClient. So I'm just starting a new script, and it's launched the browser for me. I'm going to go to my banking application and then just hit the record button. And the process that I'm going to go through here is to log in and get the password right, and then make a bank transfer. So I'm going to go to the money transfer link, select my savings account and my checking account. And you can see as I record, it's showing me the steps that I'm recording on the left-hand side in the LoadRunner pane there. Now, when I click in that date, that pop-up there is an AJAX control, and we'll see that will be relevant when I go through and rerun the script in a moment. So that's selected my date, the amount I want to transfer, OK. There's my confirmation message, and if I was doing a test, I might want to go to my accounts and just manually check those balances. OK, so that's my script. So I stop that now by just using the control bar here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to replay that. And you can see here in step 7, where we had the selection of the savings account, we've got the value of that, the balance there. So I'm pretty sure it's going to fail when we get to that point. As I said, if you're doing a traditional scripting method, and if actually the AJAX toolkit and everything you're using is supported, then even when you get to that point, you'd have to do some coding. But with this scripting technology, we don't have to do that. Oh, that's actually succeeded there. And it shouldn't have done. It should have. For some reason it didn't change things. No, what was that? One of the problems of doing live demos, it never does quite what you want it to. So that should have actually failed there. For some reason, it hadn't taken the amount off of my account the first time through. But what would have happened then is I can open this step, and you can see here it's got the opportunity to look for alternate steps. So this would give me an alternate selection method for that drop-down box. And here you can see it gives me the option just to select which item in the list it was. So I would have just selected that as use option 3 instead of using the value with the actual balance in. And I would do the same for this step. And I'll change these because it may actually fail to work as it should have done when I run it through again. Okay, so those were, so they're very quick to correct those errors because of the functionality that's provided with these drop-down boxes. And this will show me everything about each step. I can look at the different arguments. I've got there some timeouts, what's the actual action that's being performed here. And you can see it captures things like mouse downs, mouse overs, getting properties. So all these sorts of dynamic events that you have on a page, it will capture. And you've then got the ability to customize the arguments in here. So if I wanted to select a different ordinal from that drop-down, I can do it from here. So you can customize anything in these steps, and it's very visual and intuitive. And you can see it's actually failed when it's got to step 14 here, which was picking the date. And I mentioned that was an AJAX control, and you can see here that that AJAX pop-up hasn't occurred. Now, if you're astute, you'll have noticed that the step numbers here aren't sequential. There's some gaps in here. And that's because we've recorded a lot of extra information that we may or may not need. And in this case, it looks like there's something that we've recorded that we do need that isn't being shown at this highest level. So if I go back up to the bar at the top here, I've got this concept of a script level. And if I move this slider down to level 3, it will show me everything that was recorded. And I can see here step number 12, which was click on the date text box, which launched that pop-up. I want that to be at the highest level. When I rerun my script, I want that to replay. Or by default, it's put it at level 2, so I just need to move that back up to level 1. And then if I move my script back up to level 1, my click on date text box will be there. So now when I run this through, that step should work, and we should get the date pop-up, and then the date picker should work correctly as well. There we go, there's the date pop-up. It should keep going. Okay, so to stop. So okay, it's had a problem here where it stopped. Not sure why that is actually. Okay, it's probably the end event here, step network complete. We want it to be action completed. So I can select what to pass a step on, when to go on to the next step, and do we want to wait for an action to complete? Is it just the network components we're waiting for, or do we want to wait for a GUI component to complete? And in this case, I need to wait for the GUI component to complete. So you can see when you're developing scripts, it's very visual. All the information's there in the properties of these different steps. I haven't had to go in to do any coding, which you normally would do using the C language within the tool. So even for scripting against normal web applications, it's a lot more intuitive and a lot quicker to do. And if I want to put a checkpoint in, say on this particular page I want to check for the amount, I can do that. Stop the script here. I've got a toolbox here on the left, and I've got various different controls within here, so I can do loops, for loops, do while, all those kind of scripting techniques. I've also got access to JavaScript, for instance, so if I wanted to put some script within my script, I could do that. If I wanted to evaluate some parameters, for instance. But what I actually want here is a verification step, and I just drag that to the point that I want it to be in the script. Click here, and it asks me to select the object I want to check for. I want to check for the amount in this case, and that's it. Now we've got to check for that particular amount. If I run it again, it should get through to the end, and it should verify that transfer amount of £53, or dollars in this case. When you want to add transactions, it's just simply a case of selecting the steps you want to surround in a transaction, and then right-clicking and selecting the surrounding transaction option. So I might want to, there we go, it's passed successfully, it verified my check. I might want to create, for instance, a login transaction. So there was the step that logged me in, where I entered the password, and then pressing the enter key. So if I wanted to enable this as a transaction, I just right-click, and I've got surround with transaction. Just give it a name, log in. Similarly, I might want to do the whole of my money transfer, and I might want to do that as a transaction. Again, just right-click, to transfer, and then you can see we've got a transaction wrapper around that item. I can also do the same thing for basic conditional loops, so for loop, and here I can go in and change the amount. So if I wanted to do 2 transfers, just change that value, and then it will go through and do 2 transfers when it goes through for me. So very easy to use, very intuitive, and supports all AJAX applications. That's a very quick introduction to TruClient scripting. The benefits of us, as we've seen, it's very fast, it's very intuitive to use, and there's less expertise required. So LoadRunner scripting historically can often require quite a bit of programming knowledge, whereas using something like the TruClient there, it's much more like your traditional functional testing applications that are very visual and very interactive. So the aim of it, is, as I said, is to support AJAX applications, but you might want to use it even for just doing standard web testing, where you don't have the expertise to develop complicated scripts. It's something you could do much more easily with TruClient. Okay, so that was the first new feature, a major new feature in LoadRunner 11. Next we have multi-level reporting. Traditionally in LoadRunner analysis tool, when you're creating reports, you're working with the live data in your analysis session, and you create a number of graphs. You can merge things together, so you might have running users versus response times, for instance. And then once you've created those sets of graphs, you might want to create different reports for different people, so you have to go through that process again maybe to create a management report versus a system level report. And then you have to export, convert those manually to different data formats to pass them around. And while you're doing that editing and configuration process, you're working with the live data. If you've got a big data set, that can be quite slow. When you do a refresh or put a filter on a graph, it can take quite a bit of time to refresh. So the whole process can be quite time consuming. In the new version of LoadRunner, we have the concept of multi-level reporting. And this is where you can create a template, and you do it in the same type of way that you would create those normal graphs, so you can still cross different graph statistics together. But when you're doing this, you're not working with the live data. You're just creating a template. And within a single analysis session, you can have multiple templates. So you've got this idea of templates for different personas. And there are a number of templates that come out of the box, such as high-level management report and lower-level system report, for instance. And you can customize these, create your own, save them, and you can add text and logos and all this kind of thing. So you can make it much more personalized than the standard kind of graph output you get from the normal analysis reports. And you can also specify the format that these different reports are saved in. So it makes it much quicker, much easier. You're not wasting as much time waiting for the data to refresh when you're creating these reports. And it's very easy to get different types of reports out for these different personas. And this all fits in with the idea of increasing the visibility within an organization, being able to get these different types of reports out to different people quickly and easily. So that's multi-level reporting. Next we have, we do these two together, just bullet points really, other new protocols, and then an update on platform support, environment support. So we've talked about AJAX TruClient. There's also a protocol to support Microsoft Silverlight, and both of these are part of the Rich Internet Applications bundle. So if you already have Rich Internet Applications, or you have the Web 2.0 protocol bundle, which includes RIA, then if you upgrade to version 11 of LoadRunner, you will get these new protocols as part of that. There's also a new Java-based protocol, which is for Java applications that are running over HTTP, and this has capabilities to deserialize the Java objects so that you can work with them without having to edit the hex. So it's just like a Java application over JMS. It gives you that kind of capability. There's also a new protocol to support service test within the SOA bundle. Service test is our functional tool for testing web services. Historically, the first iteration of that tool was based on the LoadRunner ViewGen tool. The new version 11 of service test has been developed from the ground up. It's a graphical-based tool for testing applications that don't have an interface, such as SOA applications. So in order to support the service test scripts in LoadRunner, there's this new protocol in the SOA bundle. So you develop your functional scripts, you can then open them up in LoadRunner and use them to do a performance test. This is just a delta, really, of the supported environments. So we still support XP and older versions of Internet Explorer, for instance. This is just the latest support platform. So IE 8, Firefox 3, Google Chrome is now supported as well for recording scripts. And we support Windows 7, Windows Server 2008, 32-bit and 64-bit. In the initial release of LoadRunner, there were recording on the ViewGen wasn't supported on 64-bit, but that is supported now. And LoadRunner itself is still a 32-bit application, so we support recording of 32-bit applications, obviously not the recording of 64-bit applications. So if you've got 64-bit applications that you want to test, you have to wait till the next version of LoadRunner, I think, before that support comes in. But if you're just running on a 64-bit operating system, then LoadRunner will work fine. Some miscellaneous enhancements. Data format extensions is a new capability within ViewGen for scripting, and it allows you to basically format the data that comes back from your server as XML, so that you can then use XPath queries to validate that data. There's also been improvements to the snapshot viewer, which is the web viewer you get when you're developing web scripts, which is just a browser implementation within ViewGen. So that has now got better support for current browser technology. Support for Citrix Web Access, the Enfuse protocol. And there's also been some improvements to the Correlation Studio. So if you are using traditional LoadRunner protocol, correlation should be a bit easier now. And there's some performance improvements to the analysis tool as well. So those are the new features, capabilities in LoadRunner 11. As I said, they apply to Performance Center as well. Those are all common technologies. The scripting technology and the analysis technology are the same in both products. Now we're going to look at the new features in Performance Center. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Performance Center, I'll try and give you a bit of an overview of the product as well as we go through. So as I mentioned in the introduction, Performance Center is our enterprise-level performance testing solution. It's web-based, allows you to access it globally. The license is global as well, so there are no site restrictions as there are with LoadRunner. And as you'd expect, multiple people can be working on projects at the same time. You can have multiple projects, and all of the management capabilities, all of the management tasks that you would normally have to do outside of LoadRunner, such as keeping a record of your tests, your results, your requirements, even. All of those things are managed by Performance Center. And there's a certain amount of built-in reporting as well. So if you're working at an enterprise level doing performance testing, Performance Center may be the right solution for you. So going back to the product suite, this is the area we're going to be looking at. And the capabilities you see here, things like user and privilege management, infrastructure management, a central repository, these are all the things that you would expect to have from a center of excellence tool. So what's new in Performance Center 11? Quite a lot, actually. Performance Center has been re-architected and are now part of the ALM suite. And I'll explain what ALM means as we go through the next few slides. Part of that merging with ALM is that we now have requirements and defects as a core part of Performance Center. And then there's some other new features, specifically in Performance Center, that I'll talk about towards the end. So, HP ALM. What is it and why is it? Essentially, Performance Center as an application was developed in its own stream. If you're familiar with the Mercury toolset, the HP Quality Management toolset, you may also know about Quality Center. So Quality Center is the tool where you manage your requirements, your functional requirements and business requirements. It's where you manage your functional testing and your defects. And you've got traceability between those three entities. Performance Center, as I said, was developed as a separate application, and there was no integration between those two products. And that's something that's been a need, if you like, for the last couple of years. So the idea is we want to be able to have all of our requirements, defects, and all of our tests, whether they're related to functional testing or performance testing, we want to view those all in the same place. So we've got a single view of our application. And this is where the idea of Application Lifecycle comes in. So essentially the Quality Center platform has now been renamed. The core technology from that is now called the ALM platform, Application Lifecycle Management. And Performance Center has been ported and merged with Quality Center onto this platform. And there's different levels of the product that you can buy. In Quality Center 10, we had the Enterprise Edition and the Premier Edition. So now in version 11, you have Quality Center Enterprise, and the Premier Edition is called ALM 11. So if you hear the term ALM 11, that's talking about the product, the Premier version of Quality Center. But if you hear the term the ALM platform, that's the underlying technology that now supports both Quality Center and Performance Center. And the reason they renamed it to ALM is because it's now focused on more than just quality. We have integrations for development teams, integrations for business analysts. So the tool set is now being used by a wider audience, hence the name of it to Application Lifecycle Management. So what does this mean for Performance Center? Well, it means that it gets a lot of the technology that has been in Quality Center for the last couple of versions as now standard technology in Performance Center. So things like version control, having version control of all your scenarios and all of your scripts. That's now just a core technology that's built into the underlying platform on which Performance Center runs. All those other features of Quality Center that you see there in the grey area, the ALM platform area, such as the workflow that you have in Quality Center, that's now a core part of Performance Center as well. So you have all of the performance testing capabilities that you had previously, plus requirements and defects is another inherited capability, and all of these underlying technologies. Just to give you a brief overview of the licensing differences between LoadRunner and Performance Center. LoadRunner is licensed on a controller basis, and there's no sharing of licenses between those controllers. So in this instance, this is an example of a customer who might have 5 LoadRunner controllers, each with different levels of licensing on each of those controllers. And you can see here, although the customer actually owns 2,500 web users, the largest test they can do is with 1,500, which is the amount they have on that second controller there. Also in LoadRunner, when you're configuring a test, when you're designing your scenario, when you're setting up monitors, you're using the controller software. You're consuming that controller license. So oftentimes If a project needs to do some performance testing in a particular week, they will book out a controller for the whole of that week. They will take physical ownership of that controller, and it will be theirs exclusively. They might only be doing 10 or 15 hours testing that week, but they're using that controller for 40 working hours, say. So there's some downtime, if you like, in testing capability of that license. Performance Center has everything centralized. So our licenses are centralized, and all of our controllers are centralized as well. And the controllers are only used when you execute the performance test. So when you're doing the setup of the scenario and the monitors, you're just doing that within the Performance Center application. So oftentimes people find they can reduce the number of controllers that they need because they're getting better use out of those controller licenses. You also have all of your user licenses centralized as well, the V users. So whenever a run is executed, it will just draw down on that central pool of licenses. So I can reduce my overall license count that I might have previously distributed across these larger number of controllers and reduce that when I centralize to Performance Center. So that's the difference in the license model of the two. And as I mentioned before, Performance Center is a global license, so you can use it from anywhere, whereas LoadRunner is a site license. So the test engineer, the LoadRunner controller, and the application under test should all be at the same location. So the license doesn't support offshoring. So Performance Center, just to give you an idea of what the tool looks like, this is one of the dashboards from the Performance Center server. You can see here in the top left-hand pane, we have a test set. And then in the top right-hand pane, we have the tests that have been executed for that particular test set. You can see there's one highlighted there, and that's finished, and it's finished with a success result. You can see there with the green tick. So that shows me the status, and that would flow up to my requirements if I've got a performance requirement linked to this particular test. In the bottom pane, bottom right, we have the results for that test that's selected, and I can view those online or download them if I want to open them in analysis. And these dashboards are configurable. You can make it show what you want. You can see, if you look back at the top right pane there, at the very top of the list of test history, when I actually took this screenshot, there was a test in the initializing state. So I could have logged in as a different user and seen that someone had initialized the test, or maybe even see that there's a test running. And if so, I could then go and view that test. So when you initialize a test, Performance Center goes away and provisions the resources in the background, so your controllers, your load generators. It would look at the test that you've selected and find what resources are required, and then provision those in the background. And you can schedule those resources so that you've got the exclusive use of them for a particular time period. This is the screen that you will then get presented with. It's a run screen. Be very familiar to you if you're a LoadRunner user. It shows you the same type of information you get from the LoadRunner screen, but this is just implemented as a web page. The beauty of this is that because it's a web-based collaboration tool, somebody else could log in from a different location. There might be offshore testers running a test, and I want to see what's going on, how the application is performing. So I could log in myself and view a different set of graphs, look at the specific things that I'm interested in. Or I might be the application system administrator, and I want to look at my web server resources, it's the graph that's highlighted here, rather than the business user who might want to look at the response times. So Performance Center gives you that collaboration capability. There are two ways you can deploy it as a standalone implementation. So you get the ALM platform capabilities, but just for performance testing, so performance requirements and defects and performance test management. Or you can deploy as a merged platform, merged with Quality Center on the full ALM 11 product. And there you get all of the testing capabilities and all of the requirement types for the different entities, so business requirements, functional tests, service tests, all those kind of things, as well as the enhanced reporting, project planning capabilities of the ALM platform. So the benefits of merging the two together is that you have everything in one place, your requirements, your defects, a single dashboard to show you the status of the quality of an application. You also get a number of extra Centre of Excellence features when you use the ALM platform, such as asset sharing, being able to share requirements and test assets between different projects. Project planning and tracking, libraries and baselines, those are all capabilities of the ALM platform that you would get if you merge the QC and ALM and PC platforms together. I'm not going to go through this screen and the next screen. I've put these in here so that when you download the presentations afterwards, you can refer to these as a reference point. So this talks about all the features within the ALM platform and what you get in QC11, what you get in the Premier version, ALM 11, what you get in Performance Center standalone 11. And obviously if you merge the two together, you have QC and PC together, it will be the ALM platform. So there's 2 slides there with all of those capability details in there that you can look at your leisure. So requirements and defects, I've talked somewhat about this, so let me skip to the chase. Here's another screenshot from the tool which shows you some of the performance requirements, and this will look familiar to you if you're a quality center user. So you now have the ability to define these performance requirements, such as system should sustain 2,000 concurrent users. And then you have the status of those requirements, as we saw from that previous dashboard, whether it passed or whether it failed. And then you've got the requirements coverage that bubbles up to the high level, so you can see at the application level how much of your application is covered, how many of your requirements have been covered, and how many tests have you run, what's the pass and fail rate. So Performance Center now has those capabilities built in. And you also get defects. I don't have a screenshot of defects. It's the same concept as Quality Center. You get the ability to raise defects and have the link between the defect and the test and the requirement, so you can see the status of your requirements is related to the defects. So finally, 2 new features in Performance Center 11. The first one is topology, monitoring topologies. This is a new way to deploy monitors in Performance Center. As you can see, it's very visual. You can still use the older controller-based monitors that you have in LoadRunner and in Performance Center. This is just a new way to do it, and this uses HP SiteScope as the monitoring engine in the background. And you get SiteScope licenses free of charge with LoadRunner and Performance Center, and they're designed to be used exclusively for monitoring the application under test. So this new monitoring tool allows you to drag and drop these different components onto the workspace. So it might be IIS or JBoss or Oracle, whatever you want to monitor. And then you would predefine your application hosts, so your web server, your database server, etc. And you might get your system administrator of the test environment to log into Performance Center and do that. And then here you just make a link between your entity, so JBoss, and the JBoss server. And then once you've done that, you can right-click and say deploy monitors, or you could in fact select all of those. And then on the menu bar at the top, you'll see there's a Deploy Monitor Templates button, far right. So if you click that, it will deploy a best practice set of monitors across the whole of that infrastructure. And those are non-intrusive monitors, just using standard monitoring interfaces such as Microsoft Performance Monitor or RStat Daemon within Unix, for instance. So it's just using standard monitoring interfaces. It's very quick to do. You don't have to go in and edit to those monitors if you don't want to, but you can then go in and customize them. And the best practice set of monitors for things like IIS would include some IIS counters, some ASP, ASP.NET counters, as well as hardware counters such as CPU, memory, disk usage, etc. So it's a very comprehensive set of basic monitors for those environments. So it's very quick to deploy, very easy to use, and you get a visual representation of the environment as well, which helps the tester to know, to diagnose problems when you're running a test. So that's monitoring topology. And finally, some changes to the scheduling within Performance Center. Whenever we used to go and talk to customers in previous versions, they would all say, we'd like the scheduler to be a bit more like something we're used to, like Outlook. So you'd be mistaken there for thinking that is Outlook. It is, in fact, Performance Center Scheduler in the new version. It does look exactly the same as Outlook. So when you click on a performance test, you see in the right-hand pane exactly who booked that test, what project booked it, what resources they booked out, i.e. controllers, load generators, how many virtual users they've reserved. so you get a view to what other people are doing with the test infrastructure, and you can see visually, when your time slots are, when you've got time booked out for those resources. And when you actually go to reserve a time slot, you simply you get this pop-up. You select the test that you want to run. It will automatically detect the number of virtual users and the time that you need. So you select the start time, or you click Calculate Availability, and it will show you the different start times where you can run the test. So when this was executed, you can see that the time they've selected is not available, but it shows times in the future where resources are available. So all of that scheduling of the virtual users and the resources, the load generators, etc., is done by the booking system here. So those are some of the improvements to the interface in Performance Center 11. So just to summarize, there's lots of new features both in LoadRunner and Performance Center. The LoadRunner TruClient is a very powerful scripting technology, mainly for AJAX applications, but also if you want an easier, more graphical way of scripting against normal web applications. You have the multi-reporting, which makes it much quicker and easier to get different types of reports out. And then Performance Center, very big changes there with it being merged and ported onto the ALM platform. Lots of new capabilities, requirements and defects, version control. So if Performance Center isn't something you've seen before, it might be that sparked your interest, and you might want to look at it in more detail. Just a quick summary of the other benefits you get from Performance Center there. Being able to pool your licenses together and schedule the use of your controllers remotely. Great if you're working on a global basis with offshore resources. So you'll have these slides to refer to afterwards. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that's been an interesting session. And if you've got any questions, please raise them in the Q&A box, and we'll be more than happy to address them.
Marvelous. Thank you very much, Jonathan, and also thank you, Thomas, for a great presentation. As Jonathan did mention, we are now taking questions. If you do have any particular questions to both Jonathan and Thomas, please do type them on your question pod, and we will take maybe a few questions, and then if we run out of time, maybe take it offline. So please do put your questions through, and then if we can't answer it now, we will do it offline, and I'll get Jonathan or Thomas to email you guys individually. If you have any questions, please do type them now. I have one question. I've got a question from Steve. The question is, what is the AJAX request in LoadRunner? Shall I put this through to you, Thomas?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll take it. Okay, just briefly, AJAX is not actually using the normal get and put request. It's actually using an XML HTTP request method, which is used to make a request to the server. And because it's asynchronous, it's actually dynamically, as Jonathan mentioned, it's dynamically updating the web page, basically, without refreshing it.
Great, marvelous. Thank you, Thomas. I've got one question. I'll just choose from one from a couple of the list here. There's lots of tools of performance testing, but why LoadRunner is the best? Jonathan, would you want to take that? Or?
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, LoadRunner's been around longer than any of the other tools, so it's a very mature product. It's over 15 years old now, and it still has, and has had for the last kind of 10 years, around between 60 to 70% of the market share of performance testing tools. So as well as being very mature, it's also very well known in the industry. It's very easy to get resources who know LoadRunner. We've also got a lot of research and development into LoadRunner technology, a lot of investment behind the tool. So any new technologies that come out as you've seen with the LoadRunner TruClient, we're dedicated and committed to supporting these new technologies and to making sure LoadRunner can work with the technologies that our customers are using. So I guess those are the reasons why I suggest LoadRunner would be a tool to use. You also have integration with, I mentioned HP Diagnostics very briefly, but that's a very powerful integration. When you're running a performance test, if you see a transaction response time, as I mentioned, something like search, for instance, has taken 10, 20 seconds, you want to know what's behind that. If you're using HP Diagnostics, there's a direct integration between the diagnostics tool and LoadRunner and Performance Center, so you can drill down on that transaction response time, and you can actually then see the call profile of the application behind that. So you see the different J2E methods, for instance, that are being called, and you can see visually how long each of those methods is taking, and if there's any SQL behind one of those calls, you can see exactly what that SQL is. So as a tester, you can go down to that method level, and you can go back to a developer and say, it's actually this Java method that's taking up the time, could you have a look at that? So you're giving much better information to developers to look into bottlenecks and try and resolve them. So I'd say those are the key advantages of LoadRunner.
Marvelous. Thanks, Jonathan. I've got another question. I think it's to do with AJAX. I think, Thomas, this is for you. Does AJAX TruClient allow you to still view the script in script view? Do you want to take that, Jonathan?
Yeah. As Jonathan demonstrated, you manage everything through the web browser, through the Firefox, and it is possible to actually add a JavaScript through the panel, which is on the left-hand side of the browser. You can see the script use, actually recording the script with clicking script. But as I said, the main management is done through the web browser.
Perfect. Thank you, Thomas. Another one from James. It says, does the LoadRunner support web applications running on IE9? Jonathan, do you want to take that?
Sure. Currently, no. LoadRunner doesn't support IE9 at the moment. That will be a development in the next version, I believe.
Perfect. Great. I've got quite a long one for I think it's for you, Jonathan. It says, am I surprised by the reported limitation on recording 64-bit applications? And I hope I misunderstood. We have a 64-bit apps on a 64-bit operating system and would want to screen scrape the user actions where possible. I think, Jonathan, this is for you, definitely.
Yeah. At the moment, we can't do that. LoadRunner is still a 32-bit application. Again, the next version will change, but at the moment it's a 32-bit application, so it can't interact, unfortunately, with 64-bit applications. So if you're running 32-bit apps on a 64-bit OS, then that's fine, but unfortunately, at the current time, we don't support 64-bit applications.
Marvelous. Thanks, Jonathan. I'll take a few more, just maybe two more before we finish off and take some of the questions offline. I've got one here. Do you differentiate LoadRunner TruClient? How do you differentiate LoadRunner TruClient with Selenium IDE? Thomas, Jonathan? Do you want to take that, Jonathan? Or?
I'm not familiar with the Selenium IDE, I'm afraid, so I can't really comment.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, another one for you, I think, Jonathan. Do you need a QC license to run Performance Center?
No, you don't. QC is, you get the QC interface as part of Performance Center, and you'll have two server entities. There'll be a QC server, effectively, and a PC server. These can all be virtualized, but part of that Performance Center license is the core technology, the underlying, what we call the ALM platform, which will be that QC server. So no, you don't need a separate license. The Performance Center license covers it all.
Marvelous. And I'll just take one more, and then if we can take some of the questions offline, guys. I know it's pretty late at the moment. I've got a question here. The TruClient protocol you showed us was using Firefox browser. Does it also work with Internet Explorer? I think maybe Jonathan?
Yeah, sure. Good question. It doesn't. The reason for that being, Microsoft, Internet Explorer is quite locked down. The technology used in the TruClient scripting as I mentioned, there's a number of patents involved in that. It's using very clever technology, and luckily Firefox is, or by design I guess, Firefox is more open to those kind of technologies. So it was relatively straightforward to develop that for Firefox. Microsoft wouldn't give us the ability to do that. So at the moment it's just on Firefox. That doesn't mean if your organization doesn't use Firefox, that doesn't mean you can't use TruClient scripting. If your application will run in Firefox, then you can script against it. When you replay that script back, you're not testing the client browser, so it's not a case of it's going to be inaccurate because you're using IE. You're actually testing the server, so you're testing the responses of the server. So it's valid to use that technology even if your organization isn't using Firefox. But on the IE support, the next release of LoadRunner, again, will probably have support for TruClient within IE, and that will be based on IE 9, which has much more open extensibility than IE 8 does. So that kind of technology will be coming in IE 9. And LoadRunner 12 is kind of well on the development path at the moment. So the release cycles are typically 18 months now, and LoadRunner 11 was released 7 or 8 months ago. So expect within 10 to 12 months that the next version will be coming around.
Marvelous. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for coming again for this webinar. Before we go, if you do have any further questions regarding the webinar or want to know more about our service offerings, including our consultancy, scoping exercises, free consultations, or software reselling, and more within HP's LoadRunner, please do give us a call. Our details are on the slide now. All I have to do is say thank you all very much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.